Hello and welcome to the Checking the Gate podcast. This is Doug, your host, and today we have a guest host. Introduce yourself.
My name is Heidi Bleakley, and I'm a writer. I went to film school. I'm a projectionist, know a lot about movies and fiction and storytelling in general.
Yeah. Heidi and I met ages ago now. I guess probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
When we used to work at the Scotiabank Theatre downtown Vancouver, we were projectionists together. Well, projectionists, I think, have a natural love of film because we work with it. It was just very tactile. Well, at least it was at the time. Alas, those days are gone. Yeah. We used to have. Not all 9 theaters in the Scotiabank were 35 millimeter, and now that is not the case. But you're still a projectionist.
I am, yeah. I project 70 millimeter over at Science World, so that's the Omnimax format, largest dome screen in the world. And it's super fun to still be working with film.
Yeah, I miss that job all the time. I wish that we were around back in the day because projectionists used to be like a union job.
Yeah.
Where like you really knew the projectors inside and out, which is a little bit intimidating, but it used to be a really good paying job. Then it somehow got
from what I understand, the BC Projectionist Union was the one that screwed the pooch for everyone.
Was the BC?
It was unfortunate.
No.
They were trying to come to some more sustainable deal, and the BC Projectionists made outrageous demands. But that's just sort of what I've heard. I haven't actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess I shouldn't feign too much ignorance, but basically the job kind of just became a 50-cent raise. But I loved it so much. I wish I was getting paid what I get paid now, which I feel like I do way less work. When I was working as a projectionist, because I was back when the minimum wage was $8 an hour. So I think between like that and team leading, I was like making $9 an hour, and. How did I survive off of that? I don't even know. Anyway, yeah. So you're also a writer, which is pretty exciting, and you're actually getting you have a finished novel.
Yeah, I've got an agent for a novel right now. She's seeking a publisher for it, so it's just like the waiting game, waiting on publishers to get back to us. And she actually just got a message back from someone that's interested in repping the performance rights for it, which is exciting. So the film and TV rights are going to get shopped around as well at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which, sounds really promising, but then you also think about how many things are in production limbo.
Right.
And
yeah.
So,
yeah.
But you never know, right?
Yeah.
So that is actually pretty cool. And I think, I don't think we need to get into I don't think you probably should get into concept on the show, but from what you've told me, it sounds like that could make pretty good TV.
It could. It's very modular, so it would lend itself. Although I am hesitant. I mean, it's in the same style as, I don't know if you watched World War Z.
I saw the movie. I haven't read and I've read graphic novelization of the book, but I haven't actually read the book.
Interesting. The book was fantastic. I think it's a great read. And they botched the transition into film for that. They just totally. So I'm really worried about that because it's like the exact same.
I watched the movie
style,
and I liked it, but I went in knowing that it wasn't representing the book.
Okay, yeah, it's like 2 separate entities.
Yes,
so
they had a name,
right.
They had zombies, and they kind of like, well, why don't we call it World War Z?
Yeah, bummer, man. I hope at some point they could do a faithful adaptation because I think there's a lot of really good stories in the book.
I think that's that one that might make a better like Netflix series or HBO show or something like that.
But in the meantime, I'm working on 2 television shows, another book, and doing edits on yet another book that my agent has given me feedback on. So keeping busy in the writing world.
I think your writing kind of gives you I think it gives a lot of insight into storytelling in general, which ties very strongly into cinema. So I think that anyone who really likes cinema should try like writing a little bit. I know some people, which is weird to me, but some people just really don't like writing.
I can see that, right?
Because it is work, but it's, I think, as I also do a lot of writing, I can't imagine not writing.
I start to go a little loopy when I don't write. It's noticeable, and I realize like, I haven't actually written in like a month. Oh gosh, that's why.
Well, that's why I'm gnawing on the walls,
digging a hole in Minecraft. True story.
I haven't played Minecraft, but my nephew loves it. Like
it's super fun.
And I understand the appeal just simply because it's essentially like digital Lego. Mm-hmm. You don't need to buy tons of Lego to just build whatever you want. Mm-hmm. You have a world that you can that's at your
take
disposal.
apart and put back together.
Yeah, so I totally get the appeal behind Minecraft. I guess I just don't have time for it. But my nephew he loves it. Anything else you want to share with the?
Seems pretty good. Happy to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, today we were talking about Children of Men.
The world was stunned today by the death of Diego Ricardo, the youngest person on the planet. The youngest person on Earth was 18 years, 4 months, 20 days, 16 hours, and 8 minutes old.
The ultimate mystery. Why are women infertile? Some say it's genetic experiments, pollution. Why do you think we can't make babies anymore?
Doesn't matter. It's all over in 50 years. It's too late.
Move along! Move along!
We will find a way to get you to the human project, I promise you.
We're almost there, Q. We're almost there.
So yeah, why'd you pick Children of Men? When I came to you and said like, hey, what's a movie you want to cover?
It's one of my favorite films of all time. It's gorgeous. It tells a really good story. The script is solid. The acting is great. It has some amazing camera work in it. I remember watching it the first time and thinking, how long has this shot been going on? Like, incredible.
I noticed that too. Yeah, when you mentioned it, I was super stoked because it's actually also one of my favorite films. And I remember leaving the theater like knowing that.
Yeah.
Like I could feel it. I had this ball of stress in my gut after watching it, and I'm like, wow, like that really moved me. That was a really emotional experience. And I've watched the movie several times. I want to say like at least 6 times, and every single time it never like loses its potency.
Yeah,
it always seems to work for me.
I think it's actually grown in its potency for me. The last time I watched it, I actually cried a lot more than previous viewings, and I think I don't know, maybe as I'm getting older, I'm getting other layers that they've put in the film that I wasn't seeing before. And as the world around us changes and world events you're being more aware of them, maybe you see just how many layers they managed to put into the film. Yeah, and I think in general your understanding of films and literature and all things you're consuming, I mean, you're constantly changing as a person. But this is one film in particular that I think I would be happy if it continued to grow in that complexity as well throughout the years. So I'm eager to see in 5 years, how will I see this film in 10 years,
Yeah, and it's definitely one of those that's worth checking out. I think it's probably going to be sort of like essential viewing for like people who are really interested in film. And
I agree.
It was one that I kept bringing up in film school just because like everyone has to see this movie, just all, if not just on the technical merits alone. But yeah, I guess we should discuss a little bit of the plot, which it's set in a what was the year? I want to say 2027. Nope.
Something like that. Well, I think it was maybe 18 years.
Oh, yeah, 2027. Okay. I remember also one thing I picked up was that the youngest person in
Baby
the film, Baby Diego, was born in 2009.
Yeah.
So we're already a little bit. Well, I guess they weren't looking too far in the future. But yeah, the film takes place in 2027. At this point in time, it's been almost 20 years since a baby has been born. The world is sort of in a state of like sadness due to Baby Diego, the youngest human, having been killed by a fan they had an altercation. But also on a more personal note, the main character Theo narrowly escapes death as he leaves a coffee shop, and it's blown up by, well, I guess it's assumed terrorists.
Which is, I think, one of the most effective openings in any film ever. It gets in the world building right off the bat. You're seeing adverts behind the character. It gets in the characterization. You see that this main character, Theo, does not care. Everyone is in a state of mourning. There's news broadcasts happening. Baby Diego killed today. Everyone's just in shock. Theo gets his coffee and leaves. And then there's a huge explosion. And it just sets the film up so tightly in that first 2-minute sequence. I was just blown away at how effective it was,
which I also think was all one shot as well.
Yeah,
so lots of single takes in this one. Theo gets kidnapped and met up with his ex-wife, who's running a sort of I guess depends on who it chooses. Either some extremist group. Some people would call them terrorists, but they are. What are they called?
They're getting rights for the Fujis, the refugees.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's another thing is that like picking up on like the slang of the world. Like it took me forever. It wasn't until this viewing where like Fuji's, oh, refugees. I get it. Okay. Yeah. And so Theo is sort of thrust into this mission, as it were, to transport a Fuji out, I guess, out of England, and to get onto a boat. And he discovers the reason is because she is pregnant, the first woman pregnant in 18 years, and they want to take her to the Human Project, which is a mysterious organization which is investing in the future of mankind. So Heidi, what do you think? I guess if we had to sort of get into the deeper, I mean, there's probably a lot to it, sort of the deeper layers of the film. I guess, what do you think that the film is trying to say on under the surface level?
I think it's largely about faith. It's about, like, for instance, they don't even know that the Human Project exists. No one's spoken to anyone in the Human Project. They have mirror agents, so you speak to someone who speaks to someone who speaks to someone. You're never actually in direct contact with this organization. So here you have this woman, Key, who's putting her life and the life of the baby and basically all of humanity into the situation where she's not sure things are going to work out the way she wants them to. And here you have Theo, who's on board with it, even when he finds out that this organization may not exist or it may not be what we think it is. He's still going to help, and he's going to do his very best on faith alone.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely an aspect of that. Yeah, I guess my thoughts are sort of, I guess they mirror yours, in that I sort of see it as basically the world is a world without hope. And so it paints a very vivid picture of what happens when the world has no hope. So,
right? Yeah,
well, they're seeking sort of like an outcome based on faith. The rest of the world has no hope, and you see like, oh wow, like this is the repercussions of that. This is what happens when society. I sort of see a correlation between like a lack of hope and selfishness. It's like, okay, there's no point in investing in the future because there is no future. I might as well get exactly what I want out of the world while I'm here.
You see those things very personified in the main characters. Actually, Theo is just going through life, doesn't care, is just going through the motions. At that point, he's given up, right? He's lost all hope. So he is basically what's happening to humanity. But then you see other characters like Julianne who are actively trying to make the world a better place, using the things that are still at her disposal to try and help refugees, things like that. And then Jasper, sort of somewhere in between, where he sort of has a lackadaisical manner about the whole thing, and he's providing pot to people to try and just, let everyone have a good time.
Might as well party.
Right? Yeah. So you get a lot of different ways that people are coping with this hopelessness.
And let's not forget, as brief as the character was, Theo's cousin, who is, I don't actually remember the
Right, you see what the bourgeois is doing during this time, collecting art before it's destroyed. Nigel,
yes. Yeah, he's this very rich art collector. He seems so detached from everything else that's going on, and he even says a line is like, I just don't think about it. And so it's very interesting to see how the world and different faces in the world kind of cope with this loss and with this hopelessness. So that aspect of it is very fascinating.
It's very grim. It's a very depressing and hard to take in film, I think, because of that hopelessness, and just it's unrelenting in how brutal it is, and it doesn't shy away from showing these things. You have really horrible things happening all throughout the film, and it's just they're happening in the background, and it doesn't rub your face in them, but it doesn't turn the camera away also.
That's a good point. I think it definitely is, it dances that very fine line so well of like, we can show the brutality, but let's not indulge in the brutality.
The first advert you see, because I was paying attention to graffiti and advertising this watch around.
Actually, there's a lot to see.
Right? And the first thing you see is an ad just quickly that says kidneys equals fast cash. It's like, whoa! So that tells you a lot right there. You can just sell your body parts, and that's a normal thing to advertise in this world.
On the subject of the advertising as well is the constant ads for the suicide
quietus,
the suicide packages. It's just like, oh,
you decide when it's time. Oh,
which is very
just kick me in the stomach. That's just so brutal. And yet, obviously, there was a need for it, right? Like Jasper even says, like, what a world. Well, you know, in our ration packages, they send you a suicide pill. Like, that's a normal thing. And it's, wow.
Yeah, you know, I'm fascinated with dystopian movies because I kind of feel like the sci-fi I grew up with was definitely not that, because I mean I grew up with the basics of Star Trek and Star Wars, which are very on different sides of the sci-fi spectrum. Star Trek especially, where it paints a picture of humanity where, hey, everything went okay.
That's the utopian version of the future, right? Roddenberry wanted to see the very best in humanity, and I also grew up with that, and that was a nice thing, I think, to base your idea of the future off of. It might not be entirely realistic, but I mean, and then the pendulum swings the other way, and then we have this gritty dystopian, we're all gonna die. Like, so.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, although I think Star Trek sometimes dances that line of, like, almost like it's too perfect on Earth. Especially, you see it all the time in the really early TNG, where it's just like, man, humanity's kind of a stuck-up, arrogant prick. It's like...
Well, it's fine if you don't need money and everyone can just do what they want.
But it's, at the same time, yeah, it was really great kind of growing up going like, yeah, we're going to figure things out. Everything's going to be okay.
I wonder what kids growing up now with the dystopian era stuff with like a super negative outlook on life. I wonder what that generation is going to think of the future.
Good question.
I guess we'll find out.
Kids grow up with like Mad Max. They're like, yikes. I better start storing up water while I can. This is going to get pretty grim, guys. I mean, it's hard to pick because there's so much that really works in this film. But what would you say is like your favorite aspect of it?
I think the world building. I think it's so effectively drawing you into the film, and a lot of that is the camera work. I find because a lot of it's handheld, handycam, and it's just it places the viewer in with the action, but also in with these super intimate moments. You have quiet conversations happening at Jasper's, and you feel like you're there. The framing is beautiful, the cinematography, the lighting is just gorgeous. They're shooting in war zones, they're shooting in all these different locations, and every single frame is just beautifully put together. And it just is done in such a way that it draws you into the story and makes you feel like you're there experiencing it with the characters.
One of the greatest scenes for that, I felt, was the abandoned elementary school.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's... just like long hallway, and you can tell like it looks like an elementary school, but it looks like it's just there's been no one in it for 10 plus years, and it's a little bit eerie because usually like there's I guess like as the character says,
Miriam,
the nurse, yeah, a world without children's laughter. Yeah, you sort of you see an elementary school and you see like swing sets and you sort of like. There are noises that you identify with that setting, and suddenly those noises are gone. Yeah. It's spooky, but that's exactly the world that they're painting. Yeah, that was a great scene, and also that lends to the world building because you get sort of a brief monologue about what a nurse's experience was during that time.
Yeah, what actually happened leading up to it. Yeah, what were the things that? What is your favorite part? Would you say?
I mean, I also love the world building, but I think the sort of film nerd in me loves the technical stuff. If you look at some of those sequences, even like, okay, I mean, everyone likes to reference this spectacular, like...
Oh, the car scene?
No, actually, I was going to say the scene at the very end, the very last sequence where Theo is trying to find Key, and he literally goes through a war zone. That's a good 6.5 minutes of absolute nuttiness.
Just astonishing.
That's the one that I noticed definitely the first time I saw it in theaters. I'm like, this is all tracking shots.
Just going. It keeps going.
It's like... Except I think there is one point which they switch camera lenses.
I did notice it because there was blood on the lens, and then it disappears. I was like, "Oh, you're clever! Like, you did a cut there," but I don't even care because it's amazing.
I think that they may have had to do that because I think they're shooting with film, and so like you have a limited time with film. So, but yeah, they pulled a Hitchcock and and switched it very cleverly. Have you ever seen Hitchcock's Rope?
No, I haven't actually.
It's a film that is. It's not all one take, but it's presented as if it's all one take because Hitchcock because again due to the constraints of filming on film, he had to make cuts at certain places, but he sort of disguised them with transition, like moving from scene to scene, and there's a few times where you can definitely tell, but
More recently, also, there's Birdman, which Lubezki is the DP on Children of Men. He went on to work on Birdman with Inarritu.
That makes too much sense.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So the logical conclusion of that would be, let's just make a whole film that looks like it's one shot.
Yeah. I think Hitchcock set the stage for it. Birdman perfected that. I think that movie really just due to the fact that it's way more modern. It looks flawless, pretty much, for all this transitioning.
So you're more into the technical aspect of the film.
I mean, actually, my answer would have been world building, but then it was. But you took it. But the technical aspect, I think, is still really draws me in, just because there's new long shots that I kind of pick up on, and like it's just a really, really well constructed film. But yeah, the car scene is incredible. It's again another single take, and actually that one's almost more bewildering because it's all like it's a confined space.
You're in a car, and then when you watch the extra features, because I couldn't figure out how they were doing it. They actually have the actors, these poor actors, having to like lean their seats back and like lay out of the way while the cameraman is like maneuvering on top of them. They're actually in a car.
Yeah.
Right? Like, holy smokes, talk about constraints. So I think they did a very good job making it feel very natural, considering what they were having to do behind the camera.
And that's also another one of those cases where it's like, what you see on camera is definitely, it's not necessarily what is actually there. So like the actors, they didn't look like super uncomfortable. They didn't look like they were leaning back and working around a camera rig. So yeah, good job to them.
Yeah,
so the whole, like, everyone on the production did an incredible job. I feel like this was cheated of so many awards during Oscar season. Like, I think like every technical award it should have gone to it, pretty much.
Yeah.
I guess we'll talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, that scene is so incredible.
The main ones for me were definitely the car scene and the end sequence with him running through the war zone. But yeah, you did mention the opening sequence was one shot, and I hadn't actually realized, which is good, because I think if you realize, it does take you out of the story sometimes. So if they can manage to be very impressive without being like, look at how impressive we're being, that's for the better. But then in later viewings, you can pick up on these really impressive things. Then I think they've done a very good job.
I think for the most part, like, people who notice that these are really long shots and are really impressive, like, technical feats, are people who like know film. But
yeah,
I think,
if you've been to film school, you should notice that this has been going on for 6 minutes. Like
exactly. But I find that for the most part, the casual viewer didn't really notice, which is great. Like, that's the way it should be. But yeah, because I remember talking to people about it, and I was telling them about this really long shot, and they were like, "Oh, really? Oh, I didn't think about that." I'm like, no, it just kept going, and there were explosions and bullets flying everywhere. Every time I think about that scene, I just like, man, maybe I just shouldn't bother being a filmmaker. I'll never be able to make anything.
That's terrible. I'll never be this good. I should never try.
No, I don't actually believe that, naturally. But I just think of like how much work it must have been it must have been so many days of preparation, and then like if you screw up the shot, it's like, all right, back to one, everybody. And then hours,
and then 8 hours later we can try again, right? Like, yeah.
Oh man, like it's daunting, but marvelous because they pull it off.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, everyone, you gotta watch this movie and pay attention. Okay, first of all, just if you haven't seen it, just watch the movie. Just watch it and enjoy it, because it's actually a really emotional, really moving piece. Then watch it again and just pay attention to like how it's made, and it's just as good an experience, I think. I don't know, any other interesting ideas or things in the movie that you want to talk about?
I thought it was
details you picked up on.
The art emulating life. The film touches on a lot of things that are happening today, as far as with refugees, with immigration, with totalitarian state. These are things that are all happening right now, and I mean science fiction does deal with things that are happening right now in general, but I think this film was a very interesting look at how a government can use fear to control its people. And I think the whole refugee system that was getting set up was solely for the government to control the people, to say, look at how many people want to come and experience the good life that you have here. You better not screw this up. Do what we say. we have absolute power, we will make you disappear.
You know, this is actually strangely relevant to very current events.
Right.
With, for those who don't know about the bill, C/51, yeah. Or, yeah, C-51 having, like, just passed completely, which makes my jaw drop that it was even, like, for A, that it was considered, B, that it made it past, like, Parliament, and then past the Senate, and now is a law, and then now Canada has second-class citizens, and it's just like, it's just jaw-dropping that the government wasn't paying any attention to what people actually wanted, which.
Oh, you think they care? Do you think that we can make any difference in the system? We're just like cogs in this huge machine.
So despite like huge public opposition and the thing is, like, I don't even understand why they I mean, I guess I can't see any benefit to the people that this bill actually provides. But now it's law. And it does kind of feel like it's not the world of children of men, and it's not the government of children of men, but, like, it's a step in that direction.
You don't get stormtroopers overnight. You get a clear progression of little tiny steps, and they all maybe seem like they're not too terrible. Some of them more terrible than others. Bill C-51.
Yeah. That one is, I think, like, a huge step in the wrong direction.
Agreed.
I'm like, part of me is literally considering moving to another country because of it. I'm like, just like, I like, hey, this is the way Canada's going. Why? Like, this used to be the quote unquote best country in the world to live in, and now it's becoming that less and less. Maybe the UK is the way to go.
Maybe, yeah. And you have people from countries all over the world fleeing their homes to try and escape totalitarian regimes. The UN just said, like, look, all of these boatloads of people are coming from Eritrea and are going to land in your countries. Please don't send them back. They will be killed. Find a way to grant them asylum. You know, Australia is having an issue with people coming in boats. The whole world is having to figure out how to deal with refugees that are coming from situations that are so abhorrent that you can't in good conscience send them back, but then what do you do with them?
And even on a less, like, severe scale, like, there's people who are, like, having to leave their countries, which are, like they're nice countries, but there's no jobs available for them. Like the Irish.
Oh,
there's so many.
There's so many in Vancouver that just came here because there is literally no work in Ireland for them. The joblessness around the world, particularly for our age range, is just staggering. What is happening? Like.
Yeah, I literally, like, I work with several Irish people, and it's almost funny because the way they talk about other Irish people is so, like, negative.
Oh no!
It's like, it's really funny. Just hearing the sort of, but because they also, like, they're very aware of, like, how they come. They come in, like, literally into a country with a cluster of their friends, and one of them says, like, it's not so much that we kind of, like, come to a country, we more, like, infest a country. I'm like, dude, I don't know if you should. I didn't even, like.
But that's the glory of Canada. You can come from wherever, and if you can make it work, then you're welcome here. That's awesome. Like, I really enjoy that about Canada, that we can be so diverse. It just sucks that other countries are having such a rough time that people feel the need to leave when they might not necessarily want to, you know? So. And I think Children of Men shows that, where basically the whole rest of the world is on fire. And look, the glorious United Kingdom stands alone. Oh yeah, propaganda films.
Yeah. Which only lend hints as to what was going on in the other countries.
Yeah.
One of the most shocking ones that really stood out to me. Again, this is back to the world building. It says New York, and it just shows a mushroom cloud. It's
yeah.
Like, oh.
Yeah.
Something big happened in New York.
And then it goes Rome, Paris. Yeah. France. It like shows all the major cities of the world just on fire.
And then another hint of the New York thing was when Theo asked, were your parents in New York? She's like, yeah. He's like, Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry, right?
And it's like, it's only hinted at, but it's in the world that New York has been nuked, and that's like one of the it must have been a huge turning point in whatever in the whole crisis of the planet. I love this movie so much.
Right?
I love. Oh, this is great. One thing I noticed with the film, a cool little detail, was when Theo, like the opening sequence is after the explosion. Theo's ears are ringing.
Yeah.
And if you notice, every time he has a brush with death. No, that's almost too broad.
I think whenever there's more bombs, I noticed that when he's in the war zone again and there's bombs going off, not even necessarily that close to him, they bring in that ringing.
But actually, not even bombs. Whenever he loses someone very close to him, that ringing happens. When, okay, spoiler alert, people. Jasper, when he dies, the ringing happens.
Oh, yeah, and that wasn't even any noise.
And also Julianne Moore's character, Julian. When she dies, the ringing as well. Just so I think that it starts off with his brush with death, and then as people that he really cares about also die, the ringing happens again. And so there's this sort of a theme of like maybe Julian at one point says that ringing in your ears is it's
the cells, it's
the
frequencies that you'll never hear again. It's the what did she say? The death knell.
And when the ringing's gone, you'll never hear that frequency again. So I guess it sort of parallels with the people that he loses.
And I'll never see them again.
You'll never see them again. Yeah. Which the scene where after Julian dies, and he just has this private moment.
Man, that was so brutal.
That one almost brought me to tears. Again, it's one of those cases with this movie where you know it's coming, but like the scenes are still as effective. Yeah. Oh, actually, I'm getting like emotional just talking about it.
I think that scene was particularly effective because you wonder how are people dealing with all of these horrible things during, like, he's fleeing for his life at this point, right? They have to get back in the car and keep moving, but he's just lost someone that's probably the closest person to him in his life. So they allow him 5 seconds of grief, and then he has to pick himself back up and go. And I just thought that was really interesting that they showed it, and I think it helped characterize Theo a bit more, so he's not totally dead to the world.
I think because also meeting up with Julian again kind of brought back a little bit of that hope. He's like, okay, maybe we could re-spark something. Maybe that I don't have to die alone. Maybe there could be a future, like my time on Earth could have some meaning still, and then like in a single bang, that hope is taken away from him again, and it's like, oh god, like, and I don't think he regains any hope until he discovers that he is pregnant, and that's sort of like that becomes his driving force. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the cast and crew of the film. 2006 was a good year for Clive Owen. Because not only was he in Children of Men, but earlier that year he was in Inside Man.
Oh, yeah.
Which was another great film. I don't even know what Spike Lee's done since then. I think he did an Old Boy remake, but nothing like Inside Man was really great.
I love Inside Man.
What
Shoot 'em Up then?
Shoot 'em Up was, I think, probably a year or two after. Okay. But I didn't actually see that one.
I love Shoot 'em Up. It's super fun. It's an anti-gun film. It's so good.
It's a shoot 'em up movie that does not promote violence. Fascinating. But yeah, I don't know what Clive Owen's been up to these last few years.
He's in a show about medicine at the turn of the century.
Okay.
He's like a doctor in some hospital where I haven't seen it yet, but I hear good things.
Okay. Yeah. That's promising. Julianne Moore, I think, she's just had a very prolific career and hasn't really stopped working, and recently won the Oscar for Best Actress, which is great because I feel like she's been a working actress for ages and hasn't really made it to that Oscar level yet. It's Still Alice. I don't know. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't.
It was very good, and she did an exceptional job at it. Very, very emotional movie. Even Kristen Stewart did a pretty good job.
Oh.
I think she's starting to come into her own, and I think the problem is she was not great at picking roles that demanded anything of her, but now she is. So hopefully that continues. But yeah, Julianne Moore. This was one of the first movies I saw where I really liked her. Around this time, there's a few movies she was in where she was just kind of overacting a bit. I want to say Freedom Land, the one with her and Samuel L. Jackson.
I'm not a super huge fan of hers either.
So yeah, but every now and then there's a movie that really works and that she does a really good job, and this was one of them. Still Alice obviously was one as well. But yeah, at this point in time, I was like, Julianne Moore, but she made it work. So
I know the actress that plays Miriam. I was looking at her on IMDb. She's been in 69 films. She's in everything. And she worked with Cuarón again in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh, okay.
So I think they've probably teamed up. I mean, it's nice when directors can use the same actors and actresses over and over again.
Who is she in the Prisoner of Azkaban?
I'm not sure.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah.
She was Aunt Marge. Oh, wasn't she the one who like swelled up and floated away?
Oh, is she the Dursley?
The Dursley.
Lady? Okay, maybe. Yeah, then she's been in a lot more than.
And she was in Death to Smoochie. After Children of Men.
Oh, Matilda. That's before.
The Nativity 2, Danger in the Manger.
Oh no.
Yeah. All right. Here's a movie that exists, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, stars David Tennant though. What?
I think it's a comedy, thankfully. Okay. Improvised Christmas comedy.
Oh gosh.
No,
I can't. No.
Okay. Oh, and she was in The Raven, that film with John Cusack.
Oh.
Okay. So she's working a lot, but unfortunately not in a lot of things that I've seen.
I was looking more into the crew also because the cinematography was so brilliant. I was like, clearly this isn't this guy's first rodeo. So who are we talking about here? And it's Lubezki, and like I said, he's done Birdman recently.
No, did that one win cinematography?
I don't remember, but it had better. Like, oh my gosh. What a triumph. Just incredible. But that was a really good year for film. I mean...
Oh yeah, there's a lot of really good contenders.
Mm-hmm. I was choked that Boyhood didn't get as much recognition as I thought it should, but then there were a lot of strong candidates.
It was nominated a lot, though.
It was.
Picture, director, screenplay, cinematography. He did win.
Okay, there we go.
So he's...
Well, good for him. He's an incredible cinematographer. So that's...
just based on Children of Men and Birdman, I'd say he's one of the best.
He did Gravity as well.
So, okay.
And he's also worked with Terrence Malick quite a bit. He did Tree of Life and The New World as well.
Oh, he also won Best Cinematography for Gravity. So,
Good.
So 2 years in a row, he's won Best
All
Cinematographer.
Is right in the
world. So there you go. I mean, I kind of feel like the fact that he didn't win it for Children of Men, or was even nominated, I don't think so.
Right, they sort of, sometimes the Academy Awards it's a strange entity where they sort of make up for their shortcomings in later years and give people awards for things that maybe aren't their best work, but they feel like,
Like, oh, we kind of skimmed you last time.
Yeah.
It's true. I kind of feel like that a little bit with Alfonso Cuarón as well, who, the director of Children of Men, who also went on to direct Gravity. And that, Gravity, I liked it. I really enjoyed Gravity. I thought it was for what it was a great ride, but it wasn't the same caliber of film as Children of Men. I don't feel.
I'll agree with that. I really, really enjoyed Gravity as well, but I'll put Children of Men up there with Gravity under it somewhere.
I mean, Gravity was it was exactly what it meant to be, and it was an experience film. If you ever want to float around in space, but don't actually want to float around in space, Gravity is the way to do it.
Literally, also.
Wow. But I just think just because of the concept of it, it was just more limited. So I mean, it was as good as it could have been, and that was really good. But Children of Men was bigger and better.
I think it's his best work.
Yeah.
And I would love to see more from him. I mean, if he can top Children of Men, I'll be surprised, but I want it because...
I mean, I wanted to see Gravity because it was by Alfonso Cuarón. And I was like, sold.
Yep.
A director of Children of Men, I'm there.
Mm-hmm. I like that when a director can sort of make a fan for life, and I'm going to see whatever he does in the future. You get sort of 3 strikes, and if you pull an M. Night Shyamalan on me and disappoint me more than 3 times, I'm gonna maybe drop you from my roster.
Well, I gotta say, when I saw The Happening, it hurt. it kind of like, oh, I think people are. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Maybe. It was actually it was very sad because I really liked M. Night Shyamalan's earlier films, and.
Well. I even like The Village. A lot of people
I liked The Village too, actually.
I also liked Lady in the Water. That was.
I liked Lady in the Water less, but I did like it.
Mm-hmm. And then I was like up the tank after that.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the most underrated ones is Unbreakable.
Oh gosh,
which is incredible.
Yeah.
But
and
sorry.
Well, we can talk about that as a whole other episode.
I would love to do an Unbreakable episode, actually. So, actually, I discovered Alfonso Cuarón's done films that I saw when I was younger, and I didn't even know it.
Oh, really?
A Little Princess. I didn't know he was the director of that.
Oh.
But I remember watching that as a kid, and I really liked it. And now I want to watch it again because I haven't seen it in at least 15 years, maybe. Wait, probably more like 20. It came out in 95. Oh, yeah, it's a 20-year-old film now. So it wasn't... I'm going to say 18, 19 years since I've seen it. But I do remember... I liked it. Great Expectations. I did not know that was Alfonso Cuarón either.
Oh, and he produced Pan's Labyrinth. I had forgot about that.
Oh, that's probably why. I remember, like, Children of Men and Pan's Labyrinth came out around the same time.
Yeah.
And both of them were like, wow, these are really good.
Yeah. And I learned that, like, it's a trio of best friend directors. You've got Cuarón, you've got Guillermo del Toro, and Inarritu. And they're, like, really close friends, apparently.
Inarritu, he's...
Birdman.
Yeah.
So, like, you have them producing and writing and directing these films sort of all together. So
okay, so they've got each other's backs.
Yeah.
And they probably are, like, keeping them sort of in check for quality But there's some Mexican directors right now who are making some of the best movies. Yeah, Guillermo del Toro is he's a little more hit and miss, I think, but but when he hits pretty well. And Pan's Labyrinth, I think, is one of his best films as well.
I agree.
Although I like Pacific Rim. Yes. I mean, some people... I watched it with a friend who could not appreciate it at all.
What?
And I was like, why? What did you think you were getting into?
Right, it was very clear. Giant monsters, giant robots. That is the movie. Sit down.
What were you expecting? Because I feel like I was expecting giant robots and monsters fighting, and I got a really good movie of that. Because, that's not easy stuff to direct. I think when you watch an action movie that doesn't work, you can appreciate the ones that do work a lot more.
Actually, something that came out of Pacific Rim, which looped back around to Children of Men, is the Makomori test, which is a variation on the Bechdel test, which I don't know if you know. The Bechdel test is to figure out if how a film handles women in film. So it has three criteria. So the Bechdel test is the movie has at least two women in it who talk to each other about something besides a man. But when Pacific Rim came out, a lot of people were like, well, that it fails the Bechdel test, but it's very clearly got this awesome female character that we love. So they adapted the Bechdel test to the Makomori test, which is, does the film have at least one female character who gets an arc of her own narrative arc, and who is not just there to support the man's arc. So now we have these sort of two litmus tests for films to see how they're handling women, and Pacific Rim brought that about, which I quite enjoy.
That's great. Because I as much as I appreciate the you say Bechdel, I've heard also Bechdel. I don't know what's true, but this one's something we've talked a little bit about on the show as well. Is that it doesn't necessarily mean that that there's poor representation of women in film. It's more of like a broad stroke, like, okay, here's how women are portrayed in film overall, but individual films can have really strong female characters, but not
oh, sure. I'm not saying that every film needs to pass the Bechdel test. It's just sort of...
But so it's nice that there's now two tests that you can kind of run by.
Yeah, exactly.
One of what we covered on the show, which it hasn't been posted at this point in time, but we talked about, Paul and I, Good Will Hunting, which has very few female characters. I think there's only one major female character, but she's really strong. Like, she's a really good character and has her own arc and her own driving needs, and she is kind of there because she is the love interest. But as far as love interests go, very independent and very makes her own decisions, and so that was one of the cases where didn't pass the Bechdel, however you say it. I should really look into this test, but may pass the other one, the
Makomori test.
So run by the criteria again.
There's at least one female character.
Yes.
Who gets her own narrative arc. That's not just about supporting the man's arc.
I think it succeeds at that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that is worth noting.
Whereas I think the Bechdel test is passed by Children of Men with flying colors. I mean, you've got Miriam the nurse, key role. Oh, and then Key, the character ups.
Yeah. Also a key role.
Right? And Julian, and they all are very strong. They all have agency. They're making decisions for themselves, right or wrong. You have Theo supporting them. So I think that's interesting to see it sort of flipped on its head a little bit there.
Actually, yeah, it's true. As that he's there to service the women for the most part. He just happens to be the. I mean, I don't want to say muscle because that's what he is. But well, I guess he's sort of.
I thought it was kind of interesting though that when I started analyzing the film a little bit more critically, and I thought about the Bechdel test and women in film a bit, and I was thinking, okay, who are the main characters in Children of Men? It's what is the story about? It's about the first woman who is pregnant after a prolonged period of no pregnancies. So this is Key's story. This is about her and her baby. Mm-hmm. Her nurse, main character, Julian, the woman helping her get out of the country. All of these women, it's their story. Who is the main character in the film? A man. What? Which, okay, that's just how it worked. It's trying to be like, Theo is the everyman. He is the audience, right? Being pulled into this story, going for the ride. And they chose a man for that, which I thought was interesting. I don't have a problem with it. I just thought it was kind of neat that it's a story about women. All the main characters are women, and they still put a main character man in.
That is an interesting point. But what is interesting is that there's a lot of fake outs of sorts through the movie. In that, like, you think relationships in the film are going to go one way and they wind up not going. Key isn't even introduced in the film for I want to say like a good 20 at least 20 minutes.
Yeah, they set up the world very, very solidly before they bring her in.
Yeah. And you think Julianne Moore, Julian, is going to be a major player in the whole film, but then she's axed off actually really early.
Yeah, she's not in the film for very long at all.
Yeah. You definitely think that she's going to have a bigger part because she's one of the biggest names in the film. It instantly establishes that her and Theo have a history, and then, boom, cut off. So it's like, okay, well, there goes that. And so, like, Key kind of, like, transitions into being a major player. I think after it's revealed that she's pregnant, I think that's when, like, there's a huge turn. In,
for sure.
And that, like, how important she is to
That's the reveal. That's what this movie is about. It's not about any of the stuff you saw before. That was just setting up for this one moment in the barn where they show this is now what the story's about. 100%.
Part of me wishes that I went into the film knowing nothing about it.
Can you imagine seeing that for the first time and not knowing that that was what the film was going to be about?
Yeah.
It would be so impactful if you hadn't have known. I agree.
Like, the film actually unravels at a really interesting pace. But unfortunately, like, without revealing anything in the trailers, and I feel like the trailers did a really good job about not revealing too much, but I think without revealing anything, it'd be really hard to, like, get an audience to come in and sit. It's like, why do I want to watch this dystopian future about people dying and everyone's sterile?
Right? And marketing is super difficult. You're vying for the dollar of the consumer, and you have to get them into the theater somehow, and it's just... at the cost of the film, sometimes
sometimes like way too much, and I'm grateful that the trailers I saw of Children of Men were good trailers, like because sometimes they just reveal way too much or just
can't stand it. Sometimes though, it's like, great, now I don't have to see that movie because it's probably not going to be that good, and you just showed me everything. So
yeah,
I've actually stopped watching trailers.
I do for the most part as well. I stop at teasers.
Oh, interesting.
I like teasers because I think I get a vibe for what the film is, but I find I'm just more sold on, like, who's in it and who's directing it.
Yeah, that's what I look at the IMDb page. I don't watch trailers.
There you go. Again, another good one for, like, really good trailers was the Mad Max Fury Road trailer.
I did see that trailer because when you're in a movie, there's trailers before, and you can't, like, I'm not going to close my eyes, unplug my ears, right? Like, and that Mad Max trailer was like, so on board.
Yeah, but because again, it just showed the tone of the film, the imagery, and sort of like what you're in store for, and that's all I need. Don't give me major plot points. Just give me a taste.
And that is the hallmark of a good trailer, where it doesn't give anything away, but it shows you accurately what to expect from the film. Yeah,
exactly.
So I guess do you have any problems with the film? Are there any points where you think it falls down on?
Yeah, I was trying to think of that. I was having a really tough time trying to think of, like, what doesn't work in this movie, and I guess there's a reason, like, why it's one of my favorite films, is that it's really hard to peg. I feel like anything would be, like, really nitpicky. I feel like there's certain scenes in it. I think at his cousin's place with his son playing around with just some things that are like uncomfortable and feel a little forced, but like it's all like really minor.
But that whole situation was uncomfortable and felt forced, right? That is one of the last people to have been born is his son, right? He was in the last generation ever born, trying to cope with the fact that he isn't the youngest person on Earth, but he is one of the youngest.
Yeah.
What does he do? He checks out and just plays this video game and ignores his father. And his father's trying to keep him safe and live in this high society world.
Actually, you know what it makes me think of? Mm-hmm. And it makes me think of my nephew Andrew.
Oh, yeah?
In that, like, Steve and Jessica took him in to get his hearing checked.
He told me about that.
Oh.
He can hear just fine. He's just ignoring him.
Exactly. They're like, Andrew. And so they get it, and he's literally just playing games or watching TV, completely ignoring them.
Oh, gosh.
And so I guess I'm like, wow. That kid's got some gumption. I wouldn't have been able to get away with that as a kid.
But Children of Men nailed it, right?
So
poor
like
father
maybe
trying to deal with his son, and this kid's like 18 or 19 years old, right? This is not
actually,
a young child.
If he was born in, actually in theory, it's Andrew's generation, because if the last kid was born in 2009, Andrew was born in 2006. So he's right in that age range. And then
can you imagine if the world started ending literally after he was born? Like, how would that be affecting him? Sure, please take your pills, and then screaming at him, please take your pills.
And then he doesn't even just takes the pill and just keeps going.
Yeah.
And it's like, Okay, so I guess, that's one of the things is that, like, is it a downside of a film if I'm made uncomfortable?
Did you feel uncomfortable because it wasn't executed properly, or was it intentionally meant to be uncomfortable, do you think?
I don't feel like there was a problem with execution. Okay. I think it was.
Would you have cut it? Was that something? That
I think it could have been on the cutting room floor.
Okay.
But again, like it's just little. It's a little thing that it doesn't really bother me. It's just sort of like, well, I didn't love it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. What about you? Is there anything you?
I also had a hard time finding things to not like about the film, but this go around, there was one moment that fell a little bit flat for me, and I was surprised that it happened during one of my favorite scenes, the car sequence.
Okay.
Before the whole fight sequence and all of that, when Theo and Julian are playing with that ping pong ball, and Julian is like, he's the only guy that I can do this with, puts the ping pong ball in her mouth, shoots it at Theo catches it in his mouth. Mm-hmm. It's cute. But leading up to that, what do we know about them? They've had a history. They're not on very good terms. They're not really interacting in a way that's showing friendliness or love, like she's kidnapping him and getting him to do these things for her organization, right? And he's sort of going along with it, probably with the hope, like you mentioned, that there could be a future there. Mm-hmm. But they transition too quickly to this jocular, fun moment, and then they make out. And I was like, what? That I don't think it was built up to this moment quite enough. I think they needed one more intermediary step. That being said, it's the end of the world. Do you really need to beat around the bush like that? So this go around, it felt a little disingenuous to me that they would just make out in the car suddenly like that. And I think in retrospect, it's to build up Julian's character so that her loss is more profoundly felt by Theo, which kind of upsets me because I don't want like a romance thing being shoehorned in there just to make it more impactful when one of the characters dies.
True enough. Yeah, I didn't think about that. It was sudden because, I think it was just in the scene before.
It happens immediately after, while they're making out, and then suddenly there's a fight and she's killed, right then and there.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, it was a little bit fast.
It could have also been to jar the viewer from this moment of fun and levity and look, we can joke and have fun and they're kissing and then death. So it may have been also to juxtapose the two extremes of the film right next to each other. So the first few times I watched it, it was very effective. So it's a very minor point, and having this number of years on it and this many viewings after.
And then suddenly you're like, maybe this doesn't work. Okay, yeah, that's fair. I don't know. Anything else you feel you really want to share about the film?
I think it's just a wonderful film, and I think it's required watching for anyone interested in cinematography or film in general. It's a very effectively told story. The script is tight. Everything about it is
I actually saw an earlier version of the screenplay. When I was in school, I was trying to download. I was trying to find a copy of the Children of Men screenplay because I wanted to do we had a project that required a screenplay, and I was like, oh, I love Children of Men. But I actually wound up downloading an earlier version. It was fascinating to see like the changes that they made, and they were all made for the better. And like as far as like pacing goes, and like certain conversations were moved here and moved there. And so like, it actually made me appreciate the final screenplay so much more. And so it's actually a really good screenplay. Having written screenplay now and seeing how like challenging that is as far as like getting good pacing and everything goes.
Right? What?
It's really hard. And so like when you start to learn, especially if you watch a lot of movies, when you see good scripts that take you by surprise, that's know how to like misdirect you, but also like take you on a really good story, you really learn to appreciate those. And this is one of those that really stands up.
Right, I think you can appreciate the film on the craft level, but even if you know nothing about film, you may still enjoy this film for what it is. So I think it's way up there in my top 10 films of all time.
Definitely. Yeah, that's one of those cases where I think everyone can get something out of it, but like almost like the more you know, the more you'll enjoy it, which is not always the case. Sometimes the more you know about a movie, you're like, oh. Like that kind of disenchants it. But this is definitely not the case. I agree. I highly recommend it to everybody. Not to like... I think it's because of the heavy nature. I think you should be a little older when you watch it.
Yeah, younger viewers probably not.
I mean, at least a teenager. Teenagers could probably get a lot out of it. But yeah, I think that just it's heavy, so you don't want to like.
Right? When are you old enough to see war crimes? Like.
Good. Yeah, exactly. And because also due to the sort of like the camera is sort of in the world and sort of like just watching the world, it does feel so real. Like it doesn't feel like you're at a distance in any sort of way. So I think that a lot of the things that happen are very...
It's very personal.
Yeah, they're very effective, and they're it does feel real. So that's something where, like some science fiction, there's some things that happen that are not good things, but it's sort of fanciful or fantastical or
you can
whatever,
sort of remove yourself from the situation. You realize that it's fiction. Whereas I think Children of Men, you can see a very logical progression of how this could happen. These things, it rings true. I mean, yeah.
I think if you're very, very sensitive, it may not be the movie for you.
Prepare to cry.
Prepare to be moved emotionally. I don't really cry during movies, but there's definitely times where I was really deeply moved. Actually, I cry probably more movies now than I ever used to, which I'm okay with. I kind of like that, actually. I was like, man, I'm feeling really moved. Did you see the movie Her?
Oh gosh, yeah, that one sticks with you.
that one, like, I was just devastated at the end of it. Also, because just due to the time of my life that I watched it, it didn't help. But just again, deeply, deeply moving. But anyways, I digress. We're both. It's hard for us to imagine that. I imagine we're both giving it a full 5 stars.
Oh, for sure.
So,
yeah, I'm right there.
It's Children of Men. So thank you so much for listening. And Heidi, thank you so much for coming along.
Yeah, thanks for having me,
Doug. And talking about the film. I think you brought out a lot of good points.
Well, thank you.
We'd love to have you again on the show.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
We'll figure out what to watch next.
Yeah.
Maybe you find one that doesn't get such universal praise and discuss.
We should disagree on something next time.
Yeah. Let's do it. So thanks so much for listening to the Checking the Gate podcast. Steve has this whole ramble at the end of the Music A to Z podcast, and I feel like whenever I want to log out of this one, it's so like fast. But at the same time, whatever. So we're moving on.